calm down. Ready, set, go. We're in San Francisco, people.
Half Moon Bay.
Close enough, right?
Yeah.
The Bay Area.
Bay Area.
Lindsay Hiken.
That's right.
Pleasure to meet you. Like,
nice to meet you too.
thanks for all this like accommodations and making this happen and everything. No, really, like it's totally cool.
Tucked away in a real estate office above a sushi restaurant in Half Moon Bay. Who would have ever thought it?
California.
Welcome.
Dang, man. So we've been like along this trip, right? We're on this Pacific Coast trip and we're traveling, following these two who are biking the Pacific Coast. And along the journey, we're just reaching out to people who we find interesting via Instagram and other podcasts and stuff like that. And Miss Lindsay here came across our radar. And so the few podcasts that we've done, I've started off by asking them, what was your initial interactions with these two like?
Mm-hmm.
And what was your first impression? Because we were talking about accents earlier before we started. So, like, how did that interaction go? And
well, the first interactions were via Instagram, so the accent didn't really come into play until later. I think you just reached out to me and said what you're doing.
Yeah.
And asked if whenever you came through town, you could maybe get together and do a podcast. And I was like thinking, so I listened to one of your episodes with
Rob Archuleta.
And I was like, oh, this will be great. And I thought we could kind of, interview each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you called, and I was like, who is this?
did you know that?
And what are you saying?
Did you know we were from North Carolina?
I mean, I kind of.
Yeah.
Well, so at first I thought you were from Northern California, because NC.
Yeah.
I'm from Northern and then when I was looking, I was like, oh, I think this is North Carolina. And then when you called, I was like, oh, for sure. Like, definitely not Northern California.
We were biking that day too. The first day that we called.
Uh-huh.
I
We
just
were getting ready to go into Oregon. We were
Yeah, that's what you
coming,
said.
like
Mm-hmm.
exiting out of Washington, getting ready to go across the bridge. Yeah, I dropped everything in there. I was like, you can search Red's Hope, you can search NC Raw. Like, I swear I'm not a weirdo creeper. You can go on our pages. Like, I didn't say that part. No, but I did drop everything. I was like, that way, if you want to
I did do that.
double
Research,
check and be
yeah.
like, who's this girl? What is she? And what's she really about?
We're always looking for like new, interesting podcasts to listen to, and I think that's how you initially came.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. He's like, he's coming up the road. I can't remember where we was driving at, but I searched endurance sports or something like that, something along those lines, and then your podcast popped up.
Oh, okay.
And I'm trying to remember the first episode we was listening to.
They were listening to a few of them on those
Yeah.
first initial 10 days across the country, and they kept telling me about it. And circling back to the accents, like he was driving and like we have the windows down, wind blowing in the air, and he kept telling me like the name of your podcast.
Age Groupie.
And I couldn't find it. I couldn't understand what he was saying. I just didn't understand like what he was trying to tell me. And so like I didn't necessarily get a chance to listen to it until like 3 or 4 days ago because I never got the name from him. So the name of your podcast is Age Groupie.
Like an age group triathlete.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Yeah.
What's it all about? How like where did it
Age
start?
group is like, in triathlon, if you're not racing pro, you race against your own age group. And they're usually segmented into like 5-year, span. So like 40 to 44 or 45 to 49, which is my age group. And separated by sex too, male, female. And people just refer to that as age group, age group. So there'll be like age group nationals or whatever you can qualify for. And so then people start calling non-elite, non-pro triathletes age groupers because that's what they're it's meaning. It just means amateur triathlete, basically. And so my podcast is mostly about endurance sports, but because I'm in recovery, it's also that kind of bleeds in because everything is meshed together for me. This is something I became passionate about in recovery. So, and then after I raced Ironman Santa Rosa in May of this year, I interviewed a guy named Mike Ergo, who's Marine, who he uses Ironman as a platform to raise awareness for Gold Star families, and so he'll pick a specific family and raise funds and run for that family, and he carries the American flag on the whole run leg. So at Ironman Santa Rosa, he was doing it this year, and he, was carrying the flag. I saw him out there and was like, "Good luck, dude." I mean, I didn't know him because I was like, my arms at that point, I'm exhausted, right? You just get off the bike after 112 miles. I'm like, I don't want to. I mean, it's a big flag. It's not like a little, like tiny flag. It's like a full size flag, and he's carrying it out. And he was just trotting along, of course. So I ended up interviewing him for my podcast, and we got along so well. He ended up becoming my co-host, so he's now my permanent co-host on the show. And because we're both,
awesome.
turns out, both in recovery, both into endurance sports. So yeah, that's basically it. It's a once a week podcast, and it comes out every Thursday.
Awesome. Before we get too deep, you want to give some love to our sponsor of this trip, Caleb?
Yeah, absolutely. So, this podcast and this trip has been sponsored by Tom Shanahan, Spiritual Adrenaline. He just wrote a book, and I was actually going to talk about some of that today, like how he come down to Cherokee and had an event with us and everything. But he wrote a book called Spiritual Adrenaline. Here we go. A lifestyle plan to nourish and strengthen your recovery. And it's implementing fitness and nutrition into your recovery. So you can find it on Barnes & Noble and Amazon.
Yeah, so we had Tom on the podcast like January 1st, the date of the book launch, or the day before the book launch. And I guess a little bit of the backstory was that Tom's in recovery, and he didn't see a blend between like the recovery communities and the active like fitness type of communities. Like it was always like kind of
outside issues. That has nothing to do with your recovery.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with that, but
Well, that's a lot of the in the rooms that it's an outside issue. I mean,
you know how we do. We like to narrowly define shit and just arbitrarily make up extra rules for no real reason. For me, recovery is a all-encompassing thing. I mean, it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. I mean, I can let any one of those things fall, and I'm probably heading back in the wrong direction. You know what I mean? So for me, I'm either stepping towards my recovery, or I've already made a U-turn. It's one or the other, and I'm heading back. I haven't had anything. I haven't taken a drug or a drink in 15 and a half years, but it's a daily process. And for me, the athletics and the health and like eating healthy and all that stuff plays a huge role in my mental and emotional like well-being maintenance on a daily basis. And honestly, and actually my not this week, but I think it's next week, we have an episode coming up, and maybe in the next couple of weeks, about finding God in triathlon, and just how close my co-host and I have different points of view, but how close we feel to our higher powers when we're out there, especially doing long distance, because it strips away all of everything. Your ego, it strips away all of that stuff. Like, you got to let everything go and just be in the moment. You can't really worry about the past. You certainly can't worry about what's going to happen in the future if you're going long. And then there's just that aspect for me of being in the outdoors. I always feel the presence of God when I'm out, out on the earth doing my thing. So to say that that's an outside issue, outside of recovery, to me is like, I just can't. I mean, that's fine if that's how other people want to define it, but for me, I can't see the separation between the two.
Me neither.
Right.
Me neither. It's played a huge role in the community that we've been introduced to, through sports, triathlons and different races and stuff, and the self-discipline, the self-esteem, everything. I mean, it just goes up and really helps you to overcome challenges and build more perseverance.
Now, there is one caveat I will mention, which is, so my significant other, also in recovery, I think he's got 18 or 19 years right now, also an endurance athlete. And before he actually got sober for the long haul, when he was younger, he went to rehab. And when he got out of rehab, he started doing triathlon in lieu of doing anything else for his sobriety. You know what I mean? No meetings, no spiritual growth, no nothing. Just like, I'm just going to train, and that's going to be my higher power. and that did not work, so I don't think that physical fitness in a vacuum is going to help you stay in recovery.
You gotta have a balance. There's gotta be a balance of all of it.
Yep.
And I think you can, and there are people that have became addicted to, like that.
That's
like
what
you
he
said,
did,
Make
yeah.
them turn it into your higher power. So
That's what he did, and because then so he started racing, and he was doing well. When he was winning, it was great. When he got injured, he had nothing. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
the
Right.
That's the one thing. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
that was his higher power. So when he got injured, it was like back to
What I-
drugs and
what I always
alcohol.
know.
Exactly. Especially because he got injured, and they were like, "Do you want some painkillers?" He was like, "Sure," So it's not a one-stop solution, but it's
Right.
definitely a key part of it for me anyway.
Mhm.
yeah, because you can learn different tools. Like Caleb always says to me, like in my moments when I break down, and he's asked me one time, like, because I shed some tears. He was like, this is how you act when adversity hits. And so when you start to think about it like that, relating it to your physical fitness and your endurance training and all that stuff put together, you can kind of take a step back and be like, okay, so how can I relate this to life? And but if you're not thinking about it in those kind of measures,
Right.
then you're definitely setting yourself up.
Problem
right.
solving.
Yeah.
Like out there on a course somewhere, you have things come up, you learn how to, like, okay, this is what I got to get some water, I got to get some nutrition, and so just relating that back to everyday life, like slow
Yeah.
down, let me figure out what's going on here, how can I fix this? I think it's been
And
huge
getting into
part.
acceptance too, like I think it's a big part of sobriety, and accepting reality as it is, life on life's terms. And endurance sports is a good teacher for that, because you can be pretty fit and be running strong, and then just have a day, especially on the run, where it just everything sucks, right?
Yeah.
And for me, it's been this practice of like my brain immediately goes to like, I'm a piece of shit, this sucks, you know what I mean? And and it's like, but over time, I've learned to be like, no, actually I'm just having a bad day on the run. It's okay. I can actually power hike through this hill. Who cares? It's great. It's good. I'm out here. And it's like that practice of learning how to take that thought and go, actually, the reality of the situation is I have the means and the time to be out here on this trail right now.
Right.
I'm not in jail. I'm not, or anything. I'm not slaving away at some job I hate. I'm actually out here so if I'm power hiking versus running, I mean, that's a luxury problem. And that practice of doing that over and over helps, right? Because then I can apply it to something else bigger.
Right.
In the last couple of days, last week, like the last 3 or 4 days, was a great example of that, like meeting that challenge with a level of acceptance that you described, because like we all were feeling it. There was like stress in the camper.
Yeah.
There was some like just real like the level of energy, even off the bikes, just in life, the level of energy drastically shifted, and we all recognized it and talked about it, and like, well, what are we going to do? What action are we going to take to make the rest of this trip as big of a success as it was in the beginning of the trip?
Would you guys decide?
That was huge. I mean, just that spirit of heaviness over everybody.
Just talking about it, just recognizing it, talking about it, kind of setting an intention to like, all right, we're not going to let this.
And it took a while for us to say something.
There's a few days.
Yeah.
A few days went on.
course,
There's
Yeah.
some tension and some discomfort for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we were all aware of it, but
It's the elephant in the room.
until we addressed it, it was kind of just like just going through the motions. There was about 48 hours of going through the motions,
Yeah.
and it sucked.
It was like, I think as with anything, you set out on something, and a lot of times you just getting in a monotony of doing, repetition, and it just, you kind of lose sight of why you started. And so we had to talk about that.
And we also, it was like we weren't, though we were covering some distance, those mountains in Northern California, they all looked the same. So we were covering like 100 miles a day, and it felt like we were getting nowhere, because like the views look the same. I'm following behind them filming all of this, and so like all the shots look the same. It was just like it was no no change, no difference, and it was outside of what we kind of expected going into this trip. Like Pacific Coast, like we're gonna see the beach, sunshine,
dolphins, jumping,
and it was just like mountains.
Keep pedaling. You get it south, you'll get that. Right here is, this is they call the Red Triangle. So from Monterey to just north of the Golden Gate, and then out to the Farallon Islands, which is just right off the coast, about 28 miles off the coast. That triangle has the highest activity of great white sharks in the world. And so it's very deep, it's very cold, it's very sharky. It's not like what you see like Hollywood, like cowabunga, brah, like gonna get you like warm water. That's like if you keep pedaling, you'll get there. But right now you're in shark territory.
So we pulled up to
hills, mountains, and
we pulled up to the Golden Gate Bridge last night, and as we were getting into approaching it, the fog just like rolled in.
Yeah.
Right?
We didn't see nothing.
So we sat at the base of the bridge for like 15 minutes just trying to find like, okay, where are we gonna go? What's our plan here? And finally, we decided to go ahead and move forward and try to come down here towards Half Moon Bay and figure it out. So we started driving across the bridge, and it was just so foggy that you couldn't even see a car in front of you. Yeah. And Caleb
plus
was
the
like,
windows are dirty.
Caleb's like, "Are we on the bridge yet?" And I had to like literally like look on the map to see if we were even like on the bridge yet because it was just so foggy. So we drove through like the whole city and everything and didn't get to see one thing.
Welcome to San Francisco in the summer. There's a quote that says the coldest winter I've ever spent was a summer in San Francisco, and it's because
I missed
the fog
that
does
quote.
not leave.
God.
I surely missed that quote before we came out here.
Yeah, come back in November. It'll be like beautiful. You'll see everything. But October, November. But right now it's not. It's fog.
I said this is the first summer where I've wore a sweater.
And
all
we didn't.
summer.
Yeah.
And we didn't pack for that either.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't pack for
We're
anything.
coming to the West Coast.
Yeah. Watch out, here we come.
Yeah.
So Lindsay, at what point in this recovery journey did this fitness enter your world?
Well, I'd always been into fitness, but I used to pull up to before I got sober. I used to pull up to the gym. I was a gym rat. Like I would do cardio classes and whatever, and I would pull up and like smoke a cigarette, in the parking lot, and then go teach cardio class. I probably smelled, I was teaching like in the.
So this was before
recovery,
okay.
Late 80s, early 90s when I was in college. I was like teaching step aerobics and whatever, but smelled like cigarettes and wine, the whole time.
Yeah.
And so then, so I always did something active because it was also part of my denial system. It's just the way my form of drinking was like, I was a periodic binge drinker and a blackout drinker. So I didn't drink during the day. I didn't drink every day. I always went to work. I went to college. I got a double degree. So I had all these, and then I worked out, right? So I had all these denial systems in place to say, well, like, what are you talking about? I just got 2 bachelor's degrees in 5 years. I can't be an alcoholic, right? Of course, I moved up here, and as I got sober here, and I'm in meetings, and there's like PhDs from Stanford, right, in these meetings, and so it's like, oh, I guess it doesn't matter who you are or what you're doing, right? Anyone could be. It's nothing to do with socioeconomics or education, but in my mind at the time, like that was part of my denial system. So working out was always part of that. So when I actually got sober, I stayed in the gym for a while, few years. It was much easier not doing it with no hangover. And then I started seeing like, how like once the fog lifts, you start seeing other shit in the world. Like there's other
you
stuff.
start noticing stuff.
Yeah. It's like I'd always watched Kona, like on TV when they show Ironman Kona, and just I would cry because I just thought it was so amazing what these people were doing. Like I just thought it was unbelievable. And there was like, on the one hand, I had my denial system. On the other hand, there was sort of like this knowledge that look at what these people are doing, and you're sitting on the couch hungover or drunk or whatever. Like there was a little bit of that knowledge, and I'd sob and watch it, but I wouldn't do anything about it. So when I kind of, the fog lifted, I looked around. I'm like, oh, there's like other triathlon, like there's regular people doing it. Like I didn't know that was something. I thought it was only these Ironman, world championship people. It's like
rare species.
Yeah. And I remember watching a HGTV, like I'm a HGTV addict now, and I was watching some House Hunters or something, and this couple that was like kind of frumpy looking. They're like, we're triathletes. I was like, what? And they showed them doing stuff, and I was like, let me Google this. You know what I mean? And I saw that like there's all these races, and so in 2010, I was like, oh, there's a race in Donner, which I like the Lake Tahoe area, and so I was like, there's a sprint. It's really short. I mean, now granted, the Donner race, the bike is only on the sprint. The bike's only 6 miles or 7 miles, so you go. I can do that. It's straight up the pass to the top of the mountain and back down, though. So it's actually
Right.
not
Is
a
it
good
intense?
beginner one because you have to be able to climb and descend. It's like, I don't know,
Do that
like
now.
a 12% grade for 3.5 miles.
Really?
And then come back. Yeah, it's like super
Wow.
steep.
What?
So
That
it's
is
like
steep.
it's like this and a little curvy. But so I didn't end up doing that for my first one, thank God. But that was what I thought because I looked at the distance. I had no
Would have
idea.
shattered
Yeah.
you. No.
Well, and you see, I've done that race since, of course, and there's always people off their bikes pushing
Yeah.
up the hill, and I'm like,
Did you
if
make
you
it to the
can't
top
ride up
with-
to the top, you certainly don't possess the technical skills to descend this steep either, right? If
Right.
you can't ride up, then it means you've never ridden down either, and it's
Right.
not like you just. So my goals
Ooh,
on
that
that
would be
race always get up and down as fast as I
fast.
can because I know that the newcomers, someone's gonna crash. I mean, because some of them just come down. It's like they have they're like not even holding on to the brakes. It's like, sweet pea. At the end of this, at the bottom, there's a stop sign, and you have no ability, So I just go up and down. But so when I thought, okay, let me train for this race, and I'd already run. I was a runner in school, so I did that, and then I got into the Y, and I started swimming. That was awful and really hard. I was like, how come I can run like 10 miles? I swim 25 yards, and I'm like, I'm freaking dying.
Yeah.
10,
Tired.
10 yards and I'm I'm sucking wind.
Right. It's like,
don't
but I
know
can
what I'm
run
doing.
forever. Yeah, it was weird. So my boyfriend Josh, he raced road bikes. He recently retired, but he's still pretty fit on the bike. But he helped me go get a road bike. So I did that, and then he said, there's another race here in Pleasanton that seems like it'd be better for, because he knew what was up. He was like,
Yeah.
this would just not need to be doing this, right? Like race right up the freezing cold water at altitude. He's like, let's go over to Pleasanton. It's right here, and we can even go over there and practice. And so he directed me towards that race. So I signed up for that, and then he suggested I join a team, which is the team I'm on now, Team Sheeper, and that team has a lot of people doing Ironman and whatever. And so that's kind of how I got into it. It's like when I realized that like there was other stuff in the world and I could do it because I wasn't drinking.
Right.
Like I have the time, money, I can plan, I can follow through with training. That's kind of how I got into it. It's like, that's for me, the celebration of like, being sober. Like life is not over. I always thought, oh, life's going to end when I can't drink my wine. And like, that's when life began for me. Cause it's like, the world is so huge and there's so many cool things to do and so many cool people in it. And I couldn't relate to any of them. I couldn't talk to them. I didn't give a fuck, to be honest, about what they were doing. I was just trying to get mine. And like that whole thing just opening up to me in sobriety is what really led me to endurance sports.
So you done your first race in 2010.
I did that year. I did I think I did four races that year, all kind of small. An Olympic and then 3 sprints. 2 Olympics and 2 sprints. Yeah.
That year.
That year.
So,
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah. I did it, and the that day that I did my first race, I went home and like looked for other races around, and I just started signing up.
The same day.
That's how
that day I was like,
that's
I
how
love
we
it.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did it feel like crossing the finish line? That
Yeah.
First time?
I mean, as I was running in, I was just like, oh my God, your black ass is doing this thing. Like, holy cow. It was pretty, I was tired though. I was like, because I'd been doing all 3 sports for a few months, but like stringing them together, I was like, that run was rough. You know what I mean? I just was tired. I was friggin' not really prepared for the legs. I didn't do a lot of brick workouts at that point. So I just was like, but I mean, I was so stoked to be crossing the finish line. And then I was super hungry. You know what I mean? They had like a burritos or something for the finishers. I mean, it was a tiny little race. Now I wouldn't even consider that barely a workout. But at the time, I was like, oh, the burritos. And then I went home and took a nap, and then I just got online and was like, okay, I'm going to do another, because they had another one in the same place that was a little bit longer. So it was like a little longer, and I signed up for that. And then I went down towards San Luis Obispo. They had an Olympic. I went and did that. And then I signed up for Marin, which is in like November. in the bay and it's cold and windy, and the bay has this really strong current. But by then I had I'd done 3, and I was on a team, and my coach was like, okay, well, you need to strengthen your swimming a little bit, because that particular race, they have the buoys are like that. It's a rectangle, but the current is pushing so hard that they have a sighting buoy way over to the right, way over. And so you have to swim that way so that you have a chance of even making it around the buoy.
Wow.
Because if you swim at the buoy that you need to go around, you won't ever make it. And so they have a sighting buoy. But here's the problem. You go out towards the sighting buoy, you just go around, you swim all the way down. So it's a big, on the long side of the rectangle going with the current, you're like, I'm a fucking rock star. Like, I'm literally like Michael Phelps right now. Like, I'm just hauling ass down here. Like, it's amazing. Then you turn the corner, and you've got to finish on the long side against the current back to the place where you get out. And I swam next to the same bush that I could see, like this little tree on the side, for like 45 minutes. Like, I was just like, why is that fucking thing still here? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I actually got out of that, and and the other thing is getting in, it's rocky, and these rocks are super sharp. So it cut my foot, and it cut a couple other people's feet. And so we were standing waiting for the start, and there was blood, and it's in the bay. And I was like, there's sharks like in here in the bay, and I got this bloody foot. I'm just going to try to get out as quickly as I can. And of course, then it was this long swim because I had swum against the current. And I got out, and I just sat in transition for like 10 minutes. I just sat there. I ate some goo. I just sat. Was like, maybe I'll take my wetsuit off now. Like, I was so exhausted from that swim. That was my last race of 2010, but I was like hooked.
So how many did you finish the year with?
I did 4 that year.
4?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the biggest, most frequent comments that I have from people that aren't into endurance sports or just fitness in general is always like, you need to be self-caring. So does self-care look like going out on a trail running, or do you do other things for self-care?
I mean, for me, the working out is a huge part of the self-care.
Mm-hmm.
I also do other things like maintain my spiritual program. I do, a bunch of different things to connect with my higher power. Meditation, daily meditation is a big part of it. Daily prayer is a big part of it. I like to girly it up. I like to get my nails done and do some like girly stuff.
Come on.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not opposed to getting a massage. Like, in fact, fortunately for me, my significant other is as addicted to massage as I am. So we will get like Swedish massage or sports massage a couple times a month, probably 3 times a month if we're being honest. It's
so does it really help you?
It helps
like,
with because you can use a foam roller, which will help, but the massage in of itself like actually releases a bunch of the stuff from the muscles. I mean, I feel like I was training for the Big Sur Marathon. He bought me like a 10-pack of massages, so 10 90-minute massages for the 6 months leading up to, or 4 months leading up to and I ran, no soreness, injury-free, right?
Wow.
And so that is a self-care
Sold.
thing.
No. Yeah, it is.
Well,
I think I just mentioned yesterday that we should get massages. And
I'll tell you guys
legs
offline, but
so
there's a
fatigued.
place in Half Moon Bay that's like half the cost of a normal place, and they're hella good. So I'll tell you what that is. That's the other reason we're able to do it so much, is because it's cheaper here in Half Moon Bay. We've got a good place. So
I really love what you said about, once you came into recovery, then you started like realizing that endurance athletes is like, you don't have to be like supernatural, superhuman, you know what I mean? Like anybody can do it, like even me.
Yeah.
And that's been one of the things that I've been within this past year, my fitness journey, just coming to realization with is I can really relate to what you said, because before, I started using drugs when I was still in school, and so I really didn't have time to sit back and be like, who do you really want to be?
right.
And then this past year, like seeing him doing all his fitness stuff, and then like he'll send me posts and all kind of like these incredible women that are endurance athletes and stuff, and I'll be like, man, that'd be really cool, but could I really do it? And so just being able to actually get out there and just do it. Like, we did a sprint on our honeymoon.
Oh, that's
and
so cool.
She smoked me in the pool. But I called
I'm
her on the back.
surprised. I'm surprised he admitted that.
She did. She smoked me.
He tries to smash me in everything, even in basketball.
Speaking
yesterday.
Yesterday.
I've got a partner who's the same way, by the way.
So the reason I'm so competitive with her is because when we're out here like riding together, I have to tone it back a little bit because I'm trying to go, average like 22 miles per hour, and so I have to slow down so I can keep an eye on her and everything. And so when I get the chance to let some of that go, that competitiveness, I'll let it go.
Well, so Josh and I don't really ride together anymore because he raced at a pretty high level.
I can
and
imagine.
He's way too fast. Like, so we'll go to an event together. Like, we went to the Solvang Century, and I was like, bye. I brought my girlfriends too. I brought him, and then and I'm like, bye, because you go ride, and we'll do our own pace.
Right, and
So 4 hours.
You hear what she's saying?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
just
when
let
I'm
'em.
riding, throughout the day, I'm already going through my mind like, where's my tribe at?
Yes, I just bring my girlfriends. I'm like, you go, because it was 100 miles, but 4 hours and 20 minutes after we started, he texts me and he's like, I'm at the car. Where are you? He's done. And he was already done and at the car. And I was like, I'm at the lunch stop sitting in some grass eating a freaking sandwich, and I've got like 43 miles to go. So I don't know what to tell you, but go back to the hotel. But so we tried to do one together, and he was like, just get on my wheel. I'm like, I can't pedal at this pace, no matter what, even if I'm drafting off you. And we were like arguing, because then I was like hungry. I was like, and I can eat on my bike because I couldn't keep up with him. We got in this huge fight, and he was such a douchebag. And so then I was just silent, riding behind him, just like, I hate you. And then he knows he's a douchebag, but he's not going to admit it. So he tries to oh, look, there's a deer. I was like, I don't give a fuck about this deer. I was so pissed. So then after that, we were like
Staring at the back of his helmet.
I was just like, I hate you. I wish you weren't on this ride with me. And so after that, we were like, let's just for our relationships. But we do ride together sometimes. Like if he's doing like an easy day, or he's already done a workout, like where he's feeling like he can just chill, then fine. But like if he needs to ride at that pace, I'm like, you go do your thing, because I can't. I want to enjoy myself.
Well, yeah, and because we do races together, but he'll do like the 50 miler, and I'll do like a 50K or something, and we don't never run together,
Right.
and because he runs 6-minute miles, and
Right.
I run like 9, maybe 8.5, depends on how I'm feeling that day, and I'm I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So I totally get it.
Yeah. It's cool. I'm like, I'll see you at breakfast, and I'll see you after the event. Like
That is so mean, Caitlin. Well,
Well,
now we're starting to get that way.
This trip in particular, though, like going into it, it was like biking.
Well, yeah,
together,
that's a different thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
now if we was to do the same Ironman, I would not expect for he's gonna be trying to probably get a podium, and I'm just
we can
try to
totally
finish.
we could totally roll the tape back 5 minutes of you talking about how in all these races he's doing the 50 miler, you're doing the 50K, and how you kind of like do that separate, but yet here we are on this trip, right? And you're holding yourself to this high standard,
trying to.
oftentimes beating yourself up over not being able to keep up. And so like the question is, we talked about this in the truck when we were riding a few days
And
ago.
a little bit yesterday.
And a little bit
yeah.
yesterday, like about like just recognizing that you are giving it your all, and recognizing that though you might not be able to keep up, air quotes, keep up, like what does that mean? You know
Because
what I mean?
then,
Like,
because I can't keep
Yeah.
up, I'll be like, I'm so slow. But
Yeah,
it
but
was just
that's-
not really.
You're,
The
you're-
truth.
You're comparing like an apple to an
that's
orange, though.
that's what we talked about.
I mean, most women, unless they're pro
Yeah.
cyclists, aren't gonna keep up with a really fit man on the bike. I mean, that's just not really. I mean, there are some women around here that ride with Josh. My friend Karen, she does a group rides with Josh. But Karen medaled in the Olympics like 10
Right.
years ago. So, okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But everyone else, like, we've got different physiology. We've got different stuff going on. So yeah, I mean, I just try to compare myself to other women who are in my age range. That's why I like
Age
the age
group-
group.
age group.
Yeah,
Because I'm like,
yeah.
I'll try to hammer another 49-year-old woman into the freaking ground. But if she's 20-something, I don't care. You do your thing, girl. I have nothing. We're not the same. We're not the same.
That's good.
And I
I mean,
ignore men altogether because they're just a different, you know.
just ignore me, baby.
The funny
She's
thing
good at that.
too is oh sorry, I was just gonna tell her how like we never use clip-ins ever.
The first
until
time we used
now.
clip-ins was when we started biking in Washington.
Wait, on your bike?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you
We
using? Just flat
literally-
pedals?
We had to use flat
well,
pedals
I mean,
all the
we
way up
didn't
until
really bike.
we
When you
wasn't
did
like
your half
competitive.
Ironman, you use a flat
flat
pedal?
pedals.
Whoa.
I averaged 20 miles per hour. I was passing people. They were like, "You got to be the fastest guy
I've
ever." on
never
flat
heard of that. I've never heard of that.
I was just getting it down through there.
You just blew my mind. That's like that Pippi Longstocking. Remember that character Pippi Long? Like she would do shit that you can't do because she didn't know you couldn't do it. That was like this. That's a. I think she's a cartoon character. That's that kind of thing. It's like, what? That's not a possibility.
That's good.
We'll go do another one with the clip-ons and see what
Let's see,
happens.
yeah.
Yeah. So we got the clip-ins though, and the first day I wrecked 3 times.
Well, hold on. Step it back. The first, when we left North Carolina and we're like stopped off in Texas, we got shooting these videos and stuff. And Caleb's like, man, you know, and in a couple of the videos, he's like, I don't know how Caitlin's going to do. I'm a little worried
Oh yeah, kept talking about me, Rick.
talking about you.
laughing about it.
Being
Yeah.
cli-
He was
being
laughing
clipped
about
in,
it.
You mean?
Uh-huh.
Uh-huh.
And the very
Yeah.
first day.
3 of
The
them.
very first day, Caitlin. Okay, so a red light stops Caitlin at an intersection, and I'm looking back at her, and I see her struggling trying to pop out, and so at the same time, right, I stop. I like roll to a stop, and I realize I'm still.
You
clipped
haven't,
in.
yeah.
And I'm at the intersection. There's cars lined up, and I just dive over the bank into a briar patch. That's my first. I wrecked twice more after that.
Yeah. I'm so surprised. Well, you guys have to be pros at it though now, right? I mean, it's been.
Caitlin wrecked yesterday.
But was it because of the clips?
Not because of the clip-ins, no. I ran off the pavement. It was like a ledge, and so my tire kind of went out.
Yep.
And so I just fell over.
Yeah, you'll get better at unclipping real fast if you're falling.
Yeah.
That's like after you've
I
done
was
it a few
in
times.
emotions, you know, and in his car, this dude is like, "Are you okay?" Because he is having to come, and it was in a curve. But that wreck wasn't too
I was
bad.
jamming Atlas music, singing, climbing a hill, and I turn around and look, and I see her shaking her arm out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh!"
That's
Lord.
so on. I guess it was on Sunday. I did a workout called Brick Madness. It's like with my team, ride, run. That's what we did. So you ride and then hop off your bike, do a run, ride again.
How long? was each
You could
interval?
do 7 or 15 miles on the ride, a loop each time. And then on the run, we were just doing a mile and a half. So the total ride, I did 1:15 and 2 7s because I was with 2 of my friends, Corinne that you just met here, and then our other friend Amy. They came to spectate when I did Santa Rosa, and now they're going to do basically like their first. They did a sprint together like
cool.
15 years ago, and they're going to do one again. So they're just starting to train.
Oh, they're
So
going
I
to do a
did-
sprint, or
We're going to go do the Women's Triathlon Festival in Folsom in September, which would be cool. But so I brought them to this, so I wanted to kind of ride with them. So I did the 15 and then 2 7.5. So we did 30 miles of riding and 4.5 miles of running total. But at the end, I was putting my bike in the car and everything, and this woman who had this is very common in Northern California. We have a lot of money in Silicon Valley, so people go, I'm taking up cycling, and they just get everything. You know what I mean? They get all the gear.
$10,000 bike.
They get like $12,000 bike. They've got the helmet. They got everything, right? So this woman was on her triathlon bike too, and she was TT bike, and she had on everything, all the gear. Her Prius was parked right in front of me, and she came in. I guess she was going to stop and get off her bike, but instead she just ran straight into her own car and fell over. And I was like, I was like, whoa.
We stopped at that reservation in where was that? Was that in Oregon?
Oh god.
And Caitlin just there's a group of people sitting there talking, and I don't know what she was doing.
Oh yeah, I fell over right. Man.
Yeah, I've fallen over by with 1 foot down.
Yeah,
I had 1 foot
the
down. I'm
tire-
just
the
talking. I
tire
leaned and the
rolls you.
foot. Yeah, and I've done that. Yeah,
Me too. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, super embarrassing.
So Lindsay, you got a lot going on in your life, right? Person in long-term recovery, 15 years, you said?
Yeah, yeah. My birthday's November 3rd. Wait, hold on. November 7th, 2003.
Participating in these races for almost 10 years now. Professional, entrepreneur, podcast host, mother.
But my kids are older now. They're
Grown.
20 and 23.
Yeah, but
so.
still, you got a lot going on. And so, like, to be able to, like, sustain what you're doing for long periods of time takes a certain level of discipline, right? And balancing your recovery in all of this mix. So I guess I want to know, like, how do you maintain that discipline specifically, like, for such extended periods of time, right? Like on the long term.
Well, for recovery, I try to always, I'm do a 12-step program, and I, always secretary a meeting or do some service position because that makes sure I get to something every week. Because at this point in time, I'm pretty far from my last drink, and life could get so full that I, could like put that to the side a little bit. Like I don't have any desire to drink, that kind of thing. So instead of doing that, I just make sure that I have a service position. So that helps because it just makes me accountable. And then everything else, like, it's all, to me, it's like, I was on a path to self-destruction or death. That's the path I was on with my drinking and my behaviors because I was blackout, and I like to be out. I wasn't some people describe themselves as being sort of isolating drinkers. I was like out in the club. So
Life of the party.
yeah, kind of party girl, but that can get pretty ugly for anybody, but especially if you're a woman by yourself, like, a lot of shame and a lot of dangerous situations that I was in, a lot of very dangerous situations. So I doubt I would have lasted very long continuing that lifestyle. So for me, I kind of try to look at every day as like, this is a gift. So the discipline really just comes from like, doing everything one day at a time. Sort of like, obviously I have goals. I set long-term goals. I get excited about having like challenges. So for me, that's something that I find like that exhilaration in that I was looking for with partying. I get that through challenges, physical or even intellectual. Like I went back to school and got an MBA a few years ago, and doing that was a big challenge because I had gone to college and done well in college, but it was still active in my disease then. So going back sober was a totally cool experience. But instead of like kind of future tripping about the end of that, I just try to like every day, like, okay, this is an opportunity for me. This class is really hard, but it's an opportunity for me to show what I can do. And so I try to have that mindset. I mean, some days I'm just like, everything sucks. You suck. Everybody fucking sucks. I hate everybody.
And I guess that's what I'm honing in on.
And I go
those
to
moments.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of things I do that are all related to my program, so I have sponsorship and I've got relationship with my higher power, and I have other people who are sober in my life that know me and what's going on with me that I can easily pick the phone up or text or whatever, have a coffee with. I meet with a sponsor twice a month. We actively, work steps. So that's kind of what I do. Like I know that I'm going to see my sponsor every other Wednesday. So even if I'm feeling like crap, even if I don't feel like picking up the phone and calling her, which is what I should be doing, but sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to. I'm still going to see her, and she's going to be like, how's it going? And she's looking in my eyes. It's not like she can tell if it's something.
Deep into your
Yeah,
soul.
Exactly. And so it's been for me like a process of doing. I know that there's lots of different ways people get and maintain sobriety. For me, it's been the 12 steps have worked really well, and I continue to work those steps over and over with a sponsor because every time I do them, I'm in a different place in my life. I'm in a different place in my recovery, and so I learn more about myself. So like I'm doing them again now. I'm on the 4th step again, and I'm not really addressing like behaviors around my drinking because that was more than 15 years ago, and I have kind of worked through that. I'm addressing other things that have been revealed to me around, negative thinking. I have sort of a negative self tape, which I think a lot of us do, or all of us do. And it's in there pretty deep on certain issues, and so it's kind of revealing itself to me now about like, I have some sort of, I don't even know how to describe it. I have some sort of like thought deep in my head, subconscious, that says that like I shouldn't have a certain amount of like nice stuff or good things happen to me. Like I shouldn't want for a certain more, that if I want more than this, then I'm a bad person or something. It's some weird, I don't even know, probably some crap I picked up from my, grandparents or something. And so I'm working on letting that go, and having some self-care around that. I have a lot of judgment about myself. I'm not good enough for this, blah, blah, blah. And I've reached a point where I'm sick of that tape. I'm just tired of hearing it. I'm like, my head fires up in the morning. I'm like, yeah, thanks. I don't need to hear that today. I'm going to move on without you. Thank you. And so I'm working on that now. And I think my main focus is really on, taking a sober breath. I owe my children a sober mom. They did not get a sober mom when they were little, and I was a mess, and their lives have been visibly negatively impacted by my disease. So it's not enough for me to make an amends and say, like, I'm sorry, that's a mental illness, I now have it under control, but that's not enough. I have to, for me, I want to make a living amends to them, and the only way I can do that is to be focused on staying sober and beyond that, like living my best life and continuing to work on myself. I don't anticipate ever getting to the point where I'm like, I no longer need to work on myself. I'm freaking great and it's perfect. I just don't think that that's the human experience, because that ego and all the other little things are always there waiting to come back in and, make themselves known. And so, like, that's how I'm, approach my...
We're just talking about how quickly it comes. Like
Yeah.
it's like
So
right
fast.
around the corner, and then boom, it's onset, and there's no like turning back.
And you're like,
like,
I'm working so hard to change this. What is going on?
a couple days ago, I was in such a good place because of the work that I've put in, and then boom, it's back. Boom.
It's, yeah. I mean, it takes very little for me. Well, what I've realized now, because when I was early, I think, but somewhere around 10 years sober, I had like a little bit of a, I was just like kind of down, and my sponsor said something to me at the time, which was super helpful. Because I was like, F these meetings, F these people. I'm tired of hearing about these drunks bitch and moan about every little thing in their life that I just don't want to hear anymore. And she was like, oh, you think you have to want to do something to do it. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, no, you don't have to want to do it. You just have to go do it. And I was like, what? Because as an alcoholic, my thinking is like, if it's not fun for me, I'm not doing it. And so she's like, you just need to go do the things for your recovery, absent of your judgment about whether or not you like it. Doesn't matter if you like it.
Or what the outcome
or
might
what
be.
it doesn't,
Yeah.
none of that even, it's just like there's certain things that you're going to do to take care of yourself. And so that was helpful for me. But one of the big disappointments at that time for me was that I thought I had an idea in my head that like I would do X amount of work and then I would be changed forever. And that would be, now I'm, good
You've
to go.
arrived. Now I don't have. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that ego and all those crazy thoughts and all that negative would be gone. And now, at this point in my sobriety, I realize that that's my default setting. That is always, I mean, the thing about a default is it is what it is. That's my default setting. I'm not going to fix this. I can just, I can kind of put it in remission. I can get a reprieve from it on a daily basis, but it's not ever going to be gone from my being. You know what I mean?
And just that level of recognition and acceptance is so liberating in its
Yeah.
own. Just by knowing that like it's always going to be there,
Yeah.
but you have a choice.
I don't have to hate myself when it shows up. I don't have to go, oh, you're such a piece of shit, you shouldn't think like that. It's like, oh no, that's my default setting is this crap. You know what I mean? And that's okay. And now I know I have this like whole toolkit I can use, and kind of getting like having that shift in my mindset was really good for me because it allowed me to pick those tools up quicker because I wasn't spending time like piling on by being like, you shouldn't be feeling like this. You shouldn't be feeling judgmental. You shouldn't be. It's like, no, that's my default is I walk in, I judge everybody in the room, judge myself, make a whole without anyone saying or doing anything. You know what I mean? And I make up a whole fantasy in my head about what's happening, and none of it has to do with reality. That's my default setting, and that's okay. But I don't have to like buy into it today.
That is so true.
Right?
Yes.
good.
Here,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking about us riding around the block a minute ago, and I see these three guys sitting on the corner, and I automatically think like, look at that, they're looking at us like judging us because we're riding around the block 3 or 4 times. You know what I mean? It's that thinking, like you start looking at people and automatically,
Yeah.
form these perceptions of.
And it's not helpful, right?
No, it's not at all.
That's the mental side of these types of challenges. The physical side, something that these younger folks here haven't necessarily experienced a whole lot of yet, but as you progress in these age groups, what kind of like physical challenges as far as like injuries and things like that have you been faced with? And then like what was that kind of recovery process, if any, and like filling that void, filling that time when you were unable to compete?
Yeah, that's a key thing. So first of all, when I was younger, I had one of those bodies. Like I was just an athletic person, so I could like leave it to the side and pick it back up again and be like, oh, I can run. It's great. And as I got older, suddenly that wasn't the case. It was like, what? Why do I feel like crap? It's like, well, because you don't have any fitness. You know what I mean? And so that was my first thing was like, oh, I don't just naturally get to do things now physically. That's no longer the case. And that was a little bit of a bummer, but it happened. And then, you know, in my 40s, like my whole everything started changing physically. And you know, I was getting some overuse injuries running. You know, there's like, I don't just shed weight just because I work out more. Like there's like nutrition plays a big role. I mean, I think nutrition, I didn't know much about nutrition until I got in my 40s and started doing triathlon because I would just generally try to like, first of all, I didn't have to ever watch what I ate. I was like a certain size without ever watching, and that's changed too. But so I didn't eat that great, but it didn't matter from the outside, from the physical appearance. But then when I got older, it's like, why is this thing, I feel sick or I feel it's like well, food was starting to affect me too. So now that I'm like in my late 40s, there's like a whole like, you know, there's a whole lot to manage in terms of doing sports, you know, just keeping the overuse injuries at bay. And the best ways that I found for me to do those are yoga and strength training. And the yoga, like I'm a certified yoga instructor because I like it. So for me, that's not a big issue. But the strength training, I'm like, I don't like it. And I've been battling it, you know, for the last few
That's
years.
me.
I'm the opposite.
Yeah, you're lucky you. You'll grow gracefully because it's a key, and I'm not down. You know?
Oh, I feel you.
I don't like yoga.
I don't like strength training.
I love strength training, but I don't like yoga.
You need both those because
Yeah,
you
I
need the
know.
flexibility,
Yeah.
you need that limberness, and you need the strength. And you know, one of the things that made Ironman rough this year was the training. Was that my knees? I have this patellofemoral syndrome. It's nothing that they can treat. It's like what it is just an imbalance in my quads that developed because turns out from the PT, like my glutes aren't strong enough. I was like, what? They're like, your glutes are weak. I'm like, all this back there is just for show. It's like not even doing anything. I'm just lugging it around. And so now I'm going to do like strength stuff to like build up my glutes and get my quads back balanced because without it, my patella gets pulled out of alignment and I can't ride without pain. And so there's just things like that. And again, it's like that same, my initial alcoholic thing is I don't like people to tell me what to do. Like that's the first thing is don't tell me what to do because even if I'm about to do it, now if you told me now I don't want to do it. That's the first thing. So when they're like, you have to do strength training, I was like, no, I do not. And then my body was like, okay, well, we're just going to blow both your knees out. So good luck with that. You know what I mean? It's like, so trying to get into acceptance. And then the other thing about it is trying to put my sport into like terms of like, this is fun. I get to do it. It is a hobby. Does not define me as a human being because as you get older, you realize it's not going to be forever. Like You know what I mean? I'm not going to be able to run forever. My body's not probably going to cooperate with me. So I kind of can't let that define me. My significant other is struggling right now because he's raced bikes at a really high level, and that's kind of defined who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now got some heart problems that are developing from the level of endurance that he's put his heart through. Basically, it was like cocaine use, and then that stopped, and then it was 18 years of really, because he was probably riding about 20 hours.
That's possible?
They now know there's a bell curve with fitness level in terms of your heart health. Like on the couch and is bad, and then it improves as you work out, and then as you continue to work out longer, it goes back down, and there's like plaque buildup and things that they can happen now from long-term endurance use. So he's now experiencing that. So his heart does this weird thing where it'll race for no reason, like in the middle of the night, and then it'll skip beats. And I actually had my head resting on his chest, and it just stopped beating, and then it went kick, kick really hard. And I was like, what the hell? And he's like, yep, and the doctor's like, you need to stop working out so much. They only want him to do 5 hours of cardio a week now. And he's been racing road bikes for 18 years. So when I'm watching him go through that, like having to redefine who he is, because that has defined who he is. He's someone who can ride really freaking fast and really long, right? And now it's like 5 hours of cardio a week. Who are you? The rest.
Right.
I mean, I come home, he's like sitting on the couch, like, what are you doing? I'm like, you've got to find another hobby. But so that's something that I'm working on now is to kind of put it into that like right-sizedness of like, this is something I love and I'm passionate about, but it's not me. If it changes, because everything's always changing, I'll still be okay, but that's it's a mental practice, I think.
I want to go into the Ironman segment here and just talk about like, how many have you completed?
I've only done the one full one that I just did in May. I've done several halves.
Okay.
I DNS'd at Ironman. I DNS'd at Ironman Arizona because I pulled my psoas on my last long run before the race, before taper. So I was like limping on race day. I couldn't do anything. And then was signed up for Ironman Lake Tahoe the second year when it was canceled because of fire. But the truth is, I don't think I had the fitness. I didn't have the fitness to get through it anyway. My training had fallen apart in mid-year, and I was kind of I was just dicking around. And so, but it wouldn't have mattered because the race didn't happen. So this is the third one I paid for, and Santa Rosa, and I actually got through it, thank God.
I paid for one in DNS. I didn't go. It's in Florida. It was like $400.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Yeah. So I want to talk about that just for people listening right now. The Ironman, what does that entail? Can you tell them what all that entails?
Well, it's a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and a full marathon, so 26.2 mile run. So it's pretty far.
17 hours limit normally?
17-hour limit, but there are cutoffs during the race. So with like Ironman Santa Rosa, which is the one I did, there's a swim cutoff. I think it was at, I don't know, maybe 2 hours. I wasn't worried about the swim per se. I swim with masters, and I felt, okay about that. And it's interesting because you actually, I don't know if anyone's ever been to a half marathon or a marathon. You know how you self-seed your time? It'll be like who's going to run 7-minute miles versus 10. You're supposed to seed yourself. That's how that Ironman Santa Rosa swim start is like that. It's a rolling start, and you seed yourself. And so basically you like, okay, I think it's going to take me an hour and 15 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes. It's every 5 minutes. And you get your little, and then they just push the whole crew. It's like 2,000 athletes or something. Goes down into this chute, and there's like 4 stalls. And you just go down, and they're just setting them off at one at a time, like every few seconds, like every 2 seconds or something. They go, and then you go. And so you just get crammed into these stalls. It's pretty crazy. So you jump in. You can't get in there and mess around because the next guy's right behind you. So 2 loops on that, and it was lovely swim, nice water. It's in a lake, so no current. So that's awesome. I highly recommend this race for a first race if someone's, just because it's such a nice swim. And then the ride only has about 4,000 feet of climbing on it, which for us is a low number.
Like 4,000 feet?
4,000 feet of climbing.
Over 112 miles.
Yeah, it's very low for here.
Yeah.
Because my regular,
Yeah.
my regular training rides with my team are 5,000 feet and 50 miles or something like that.
Yeah, I know. We've been going through it.
Yeah.
It's intense out here.
I was thinking, like, okay, we're from the mountains. It's gonna be nothing. We're gonna be able to.
These are some, yeah.
This ain't
This
no
is
joke
intense.
out here.
Yeah, it's pretty.
So I want to ask you, like, what's your why? Why?
Yeah. I mean, I initially just started doing it for kind of what I alluded to earlier, which was like just that I could, like that I found out that I could in sobriety and was like, that's awesome. But since then, training and having my children, especially my daughter, watch me set a goal and then train for it has been really, really cool. She sees a mom who did not take care of herself or her, turn into somebody who will set a goal that's a little scary and then follow direction and execute on it and have follow through. And, I've inspired her to do, like she did a half marathon with me. We went and did the Rock and Roll Half Marathon in Las Vegas together last November, and it was amazing. And, that race we were running, that race is on the Strip in the dark at night. That race is at night, so it's really cool. They close the whole Strip down in Vegas, and you run right down the Strip with all the lights and everything. It's tight. And, but at the beginning, you kind of run out towards the airport. So at one point, my daughter and I are just running side by side, and it was pitch dark, but we could see the lights ahead of us, and I could just hear us breathing, and we were just running next to each other. And I didn't see my kids for 9 years. The last 5 years of my drinking, my ex-husband had custody, and he and I were fighting over him, and I couldn't get my act together. So he had them, and he was doing, what he wanted, and he wasn't showing up to stuff, and I didn't have the ability to fight for my kids because I was dove into a bottle instead. And then the first 4 years of my sobriety, I spent getting my act together. So I had to go through a whole reunification process with my children. And so going from that to having my adult daughter who, once the reunification process was over, chose to come live with me, running next to her and knowing that, I inspired her to do something like that and that I could be there with her, and just hearing us breathe together was freaking amazing, And then so we're running, and then we get like, I don't know, a mile or a mile and a half out from the finish, and she was just like, Mom, and she's like, I'm gonna cry, because she just was so like excited to make it. And I was like, wait, you still have like a mile and a half, like, like, don't cry yet, don't cry. I was like, she's like, you tell me when. I'm like, okay, when we get in the chute, then you can cry. Then, and at the very end, she just fell into my arms, and she was crying, and just that doing that thing together, I can't go back in time and change what happened, but I can step up now. And for me, sports and doing that self-care through, like, she watches me, like, care about what I eat, care about when I go to sleep, do workouts, have coaches. And then I have a huge community here of athletes that I'm friends with that are part of my life outside of just sports, and she's participates when we have parties or we do whatever, and it's interesting because most of them are normies and they don't drink, but I mean, they're not alcoholics, but they're athletes. So they're like normies. They're like, why would I drink? I'm training. I'm like, oh, see, if I wasn't sober, I would be drinking even if I was training.
Right.
But Jillian gets to see like that whole life, that there's like adults that are doing cool things and that you can have fun. And so that's, I would say, kind of my why.
It's a beautiful why.
That is. That about made me cry.
Go ahead, baby.
Just yesterday, we were biking, and I started crying, and I just, thinking back on 3.5 years ago, I stole a car, and I was all high on heroin and stuff, and the person showed up to retrieve their car, and I wrecked. I like jumped in their car. My thinking was like, no, you can't have your car back. Like, it was ridiculous. And anyways, I broke my leg, and my hip and my back, fractured my hip and my back, and they had to put a metal rod in my leg, right? And the first thought that came to mind when I was laying in that hospital bed was, I can get pain pills for the rest of my life now. Like that was the first thought, not thank you God for saving me, you know, like wow, I'm still alive. Like that was my first thought was I'm going to be able to get pain pills for the rest of my life. And then yesterday riding, I was like, I was in tears because just to think back that not that long ago, I would, you know, laying in a hospital bed thinking those kind of thoughts. And now here I am riding with my husband out here with my friend on the Pacific Coast Highway, you know, grinding and pounding miles out on the bike. And it's just something like so surreal, something that you never thought was going to happen. Just like you said earlier, you think that, you know, you were going to, I thought I would die to using drugs. You know, I thought that was the way my story was going to end. And just to be able to change the outcome, it's a beautiful thing, you know, like, or like, you know, you running with your daughter and like me getting a FaceTime with my nephew out here on the Pacific Coast, you know, doing something to try to inspire people because at one time, you know, my sister, she told me I couldn't be around my nephew anymore because I was a drug addict, you know, I was a dope head and she didn't want that around her son, so it's just, that's an amazing why to be able to think back on moments like those. It's such a beautiful thing.
And you know, that is a beautiful thing. And I think, the message you just gave and what I've learned in recovery is that nothing's fixed, nothing's like done. Oh, I am this, therefore that's it. I'm a drug addict. That's it. There's nothing else going to happen in my life. I mean, we just don't know what the plan is for us. And I thought that I was an inherently bad person because of some of the behaviors that I engaged in before I got sober. And I didn't think there was anything in the world that was going to change that. You know, like that's it. I already fucked up to the point where that's it. And what I've learned is that like everything changes. You can be someone who, you know, your sister's like, you're not coming around this kid, to I want you to FaceTime because you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That, like, or I can have no contact with my kids and then be running a half marathon with my daughter. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
And I think that idea that any human being is not redeemable because of their past is not true.
Yeah.
It's just not true.
Yeah, that's,
you know, and I'm so grateful. That's the thing I'm most grateful for, is that like I am a redeemable. Everybody's redeemable, you know, and
It's just so hard to recognize that in the midst of the addiction.
Right.
Like if there was a way, there's something like, and there was nothing anybody could tell me, but
No,
like,
right.
how do you convey that to somebody, right? You talk about inspiring people through your actions and the things that you're doing, Caleb. Like, what would that look like? I don't know the answer. I'm just throwing.
Well, I think like these guys doing what they're doing is a way. Like for me, it's like I have to see other people who did what I did or something similar to that. Because if I had I had people who were not alcoholics telling me, "Oh, you need help, this, that, the other." I'm like, "You don't know anything about my life.
don't
You
tell
know
me
what
what
it's
to
like.
do
Don't
either.
tell me what to do. A, don't tell me what to do. Let's just start there. B, you don't know what the hell it's like, right?"
Yeah.
And because for me, like my drinking was always bad, but it got really bad after my divorce. The father of my children, I dove into a bottle, so I just latched onto that excuse, you know. But when I heard other alcoholics who were doing kind of like cool stuff like you guys are doing now, go, "Oh no, I stole a car and I wrecked it." You know what I mean? I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Like, because I just assumed everyone who would be pedaling down the Pacific Coast highways, someone who's always had their crap together,
Yeah,
always knew
figured
what they
out.
were going to
Yeah.
do, figured it out, like, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, even yesterday, like we, after they did 50 miles, we pulled off in
Perfect example.
some little town. I can't
Stinson
remember.
Beach.
Stinson Beach.
Oh, yeah.
And we pulled off in front of a park, and there was 3 teenagers playing basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb rides up and he's like, "Hey, we should go play basketball with those guys." So we asked him, "Hey, y'all want to play a game?" And we all walked out there and we played ball with them. And I set the camera up and got some footage of us and stuff like that. And we shared with them like what we were doing and why we were doing it. And by the way, me and Caitlin just smoked Caleb on the basketball court.
No, they did
even
not.
with
They did not.
I played with no shoes
Fire.
on. I played barefoot, and I
Yeah.
still smoked them.
Savage
Now there you
style.
go with your lying now.
Savage
Your
style.
default
smoked 'em.
behavior there.
Yeah, I smoked 'em.
Rigorous honesty.
Rigorous honesty. And so after the kids left, like we played two games. We played for like 2 hours with them.
Mhm.
Wow.
And after 2 games of 3-on-3, the kids left, and Caleb was like, we should have shared more of our story with them. And we did. We told him what we were doing, but he was like, we should have gone into like more.
Tell them what the initial conversation.
I walked up to the kid and I told him what we were doing. We're, you know, in long-term recovery from substance use and that. And he's like, well, I get high. That's what he said to me. 16-year-old kid, you know. And we shared with them like what we're doing in detail, but we didn't like go into like personal stories and stuff like that. Throughout the whole time we were playing with them, they were like, man, it's really awesome that what you guys are doing. Like they were real interested in checking out our YouTube channel, and they were just really interested in like the camera filming us. Like there was some excitement
Yeah.
that you could see in their eyes. And after they left, Caleb kind of was like, well, maybe we should have like shared more with them. And I thought about it for a second, and I was like, well, just by being present with them, just by being an example and showing like, yeah, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, but I'm not the guy to sit down here and breathe down your neck and tell you that you need to stop doing drugs. I'm going to show you through my actions that we're doing this for a reason. This is kind of where we came from, and we're just going to play ball with you whether you get high or not. We're going to have fun. I'm going to show you how to have fun and how to hang out and kind of like the things that we're doing and why we're doing it. And so like I'm certain they're going to go home and they're going to check out our page, and you might get a
Exactly.
little something out of that interaction. But I know 16-year-old Steve, somebody rolls up to me and tells me whatever, I'm going to tell him to fuck off. You know? Like,
Exactly.
so
Well, that's that concept of attraction rather than promotion worked really well for me, because when I see other women, especially in the program, who had what I wanted, like at first I was like, they must not have gone through what I went through, you know. But then
Right.
when I hear their
Hard
stories
to-
and got to know them, I was like, holy cow, like, oh, you did that and now you're doing, you know, that made me want to do this deal.
Yeah.
You know, anyone telling me I needed to do this deal, like, I can't hear you, because I already checked out the second you started telling me what I needed to do. But like, if you're like, well, these people are cool and they're doing a YouTube, let me go follow the YouTube channel. Then when I'm having my little moments of like, I probably shouldn't be getting high, or I want to stop, then I'm going to that
Planting
unit
that
and I'm
seed.
looking at it
Yeah.
and I'm like, what are, you know, that's, yes, I think that's, because that's when I actually, the day I got sober, like all these things came flooding back of all these people who had planted seeds that I couldn't hear at the time, but they were in there, you know?
Mhm.
It was like, oh, like despite all the evidence, that one day I was like, oh, I'm an alcoholic. Like, hello. Like, I mean, I didn't get it when I had the DUIs. I didn't get, you know, there were all these other things happening. It's like, when they were making me go to rehab, I didn't, you know, I had a court-ordered rehab, you know, I didn't get it. But it's like that moment, and then it was like, oh, this therapist says something, this person, like all these people had planted seeds, and then I remembered them all, and I was like, oh, that's what that is.
I can tell.
Everybody.
I just started thinking about one of the times I got IV seed, and I got up and I snuck out of the room, and I tried to call a ride from the hospital so I could leave. And Sissy came up. A police officer there, she came up to the hospital and she said, the next time I come in here, I'm handcuffing you to that bed. And so I'm sitting there, you know, they got me in my robe and everything, and then a guy comes in from Appalachian there, and he starts talking to me, and I had just tried to commit suicide by overdose, and he was like, you know, you're going to go to rehab. I was like, hey, screw you, F you, I don't have a problem, I'm fine, I got this. But yeah, it's just like, only thing that you can do to anybody is just plant seeds and just show them kindness and love and compassion. That's it. I mean, there's no, you know.
Yeah. I feel very fortunate though that I had that moment of like clarity where I could be willing to kind of hear the message of recovery or make a little bit of an attempt, because I feel like there's a lot of people with this disease that never get that moment of grace. I don't know how else to describe it. I don't feel like, oh, I deserve this great moment of grace and you don't. I feel very lucky that it just happened. And in that one little I probably had more leading up to that. I don't know.
I think we do.
that's what I'm guessing. But in that one little moment, it was like everything aligned, and I went, oh, and I've since had people in my life who are normies, they then have an alcoholic in their life, and they're asking me about it. Well, why can't they just do X, Y, Z, or why, and it's like, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, they're destroying their life. Yeah, I know. They know.
They know. Yeah.
They know. It's not like they're saying, "Oh, I'm enjoying this." I'm enjoying trying to kill myself via overdose. It feels great. I love being handcuffed to it, but no one says that. No, but it's like, for me, it was like an out-of-body experience almost at the end with my disease. Like, I could not stop. Didn't want to drink, still drank. And like that feeling is like, it's the worst.
What was that moment of grace for you? When was that?
Yeah, so so Halloween of 2003, went up to the city with a bunch of my friends and had a party, a decent night. Nothing bad happened, actually. No jail, no nothing, no fights, no, random, like, nothing bad happened. I just got drunk and woke up the next morning and was like suicidally depressed. And so that was November 1st. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to quit drugs, which I didn't do a lot of, but I did them sometimes when I drank if it was there. But I was like, no drugs, no alcohol, no more cigarettes, and I'm going to quit eating meat right now for some reason. I'm like, I'm going to be Buddha. Like, I was literally like a drunken hussy the night before. Today, Buddha.
Boom.
You know what I mean? Boom.
Enlightened.
Exactly. So I quit everything. But my sobriety date is November 7th. So, because I made it the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. I mean, people had to be like, because I mean, I'm sure I was just a crazy bitch. You know what I mean? No cigarettes, no meat. I didn't even know how to eat. I was probably just eating lettuce. Like, I was hungry.
How'd you get out of bed?
Fear drove me out of bed. You know what I mean? Just, like, that's what would drive me to work, whatever, right? It's just fear. So then on, I lived over in Menlo Park at the time. So on the 6th of November, I'm going to go to Trader Joe's because they have a lot of vegetarian food. And I'm
Good
like, okay,
stuff.
I'm going to go to Trader Joe's.
I'm telling you all about that.
Yeah, Trader Joe's best. So the Trader Joe's in Menlo Park, you walk in the door, you go right here to the right is all this produce. Right here is all the liquor, and they've that $2.
$2 Chuck.
Yeah, $2 Charles Shaw, $2 bottles of wine. $2.
I used to work there. That's the only reason.
Oh
I worked
yeah,
there.
okay. You do have a Trader Joe's vibe,
Oh, yeah.
for sure.
Ding ding ding.
2 bells.
Yeah, 2 bells.
Absolutely. So my little cart just went over to the booth, right? I mean, I had no intention of like, so I drank like 3 bottles of wine and then that night, and then rummaged around in my liquor cabinet and found like some old bottle of Glenfiddich and downed it. So I woke up the next morning. First of all, I had passed out in a chair, and I was like bent backwards over it. So I just had like, my back was killing me. I was late for work again. I had a raging headache. I just was like, but the key difference between this time and all the previous times was that every other time prior to that, I had gone through this exercise of justifying the drink. It's a celebration. It's Super Bowl. I hate you. I'm having a fight with my ex, whatever it is. Like, there's always some reason, right? There was like, and I would go through, I mean, it wasn't conscious, but I would go through that exercise every freaking time, right? And this time, I went to go buy vegetarian food. And I did it, like, I was on autopilot. And that's what scared me. Not jail, not the ex that I had gotten after my ex-husband who attacked me. You know what I mean? None of that. Like, not seeing my kids, none of that got me sober. It was like that moment of like, oh my God, I don't have any say in whether or not that thing just stripped away that delusion that that I had some control. I'd always thought I had some semblance of control because every time before there was a reason why. And when that got stripped away, I was like, oh my God, I can go to buy vegetables and end up hammered. Like, there's nothing that's going to stop me. And that's the very, like, so all those little seeds that had been planted before came right in, and I was like, oh, fuck, I'm an alcoholic. So I called my boss and said, I'm an alcoholic and I got to go to get help. Not suggested. If you're listening to this podcast and you're new, don't call your boss and tell him you're an alcoholic or a drug addict. Just get some help. But I was lucky because his boss had a brother who had 20 years sobriety. I didn't know that at the time, and he said, go do what you need to do and come back. The job will be here for you. And I was like, great.
Wow.
And then I started going to 12-step program, and I had gone before. I was court ordered to go before, so I kind of knew what the deal was. And that's what I did. But it was just that, I will say really quickly, back up and say, when I was late for work, I was running downstairs into my bedroom, and I had a massive hangover, and I slipped and fell on these wooden steps and like smacked my head on these wooden stairs. And I was laying there, and as I was laying there is when I went, oh, I'm an alcoholic. It was like it literally had to be pounded into my head. And that's when I'm like, okay. And haven't had a drink since.
Wow.
Man, that's a story right there. Mine was in jail. You know, I think a lot of us. Steve, yours was in jail, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I had everything stripped from me, you know, and then I was just like, okay, I'm tired of coming here.
Yeah.
There's got to be more to
And
life than this.
you knew, like,
Yeah.
literally, if you continued on, that's all that was promised.
And
Jail.
I was just introduced to the gospel, and I knew right then that, you know, God was speaking to me. And so that's my recovery is my faith.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Faith
That's
and
awesome.
fitness.
Faith and fitness.
Yeah, that works.
So, Lindsay, we gotta wrap this baby up.
Mhm.
You got somewhere to be. You
Yeah,
got
I
work to do.
I got work to do.
I do have one question that
Alright.
I wanted to ask. Just, you know, if you could say something, and it could be for men too, but, you know, I like to try to inspire women as much as I can. What's something that you would tell somebody that was listening today that might inspire them either to, I don't know, like, yeah.
Workout? Are we talking working out or recovery or both or what?
Both. Let's do both.
Recovery-wise, I think, you know, my experience working with other women has been, and I can't speak for men. I'm sure men have a lot of shame, too, over their behavior. But I know women, we carry an immense amount of shame about our behavior because there is a lot of societal expectations about how a women, especially a mother, is supposed to behave. And I don't know a single alcoholic woman who's managed to stay within those societal norms and drink or use. And so I feel like on top of actually having to go through the technical stuff of, you know, physically sobering up, there's this huge like mountain of just self-loathing that we have to wade through. And there isn't any way to get it, to heal from it other than to go through it. You can't go around it. You can't ignore it. You can't pretend it's not there. You can't say it's in the past and just leave it down. But it's not true. Like, you're not unworthy. You're not worthless. You're not, you are deserving of love and respect and self-respect and, having a sense of self-worth. And I guarantee you that if you stay clean and sober and work some sort of spiritual program, whether it's a 12-step program, church, whatever, a program that allows you to connect with your higher power and get to know yourself and, in a way that like where you can accept, that what you did may not be ideal, but that there's a reason why. Like, I feel like what I went through, not seeing my kids and stuff for all those years, I can help women today that are struggling, newly in sobriety about, I don't have my kids or I've been a bad mother or whatever. Like, my experiences aren't for no reason. Everything we've been through is for a reason, and you can use that for good purpose. And so that's what I would say, just stay sober and wade through the garbage and get someone to guide you through it. And then use that, those lessons to help another woman get sober. So that's what I'd say about that. About working out, you're never too old to do it. I think men and women both say that. It's like, oh, I didn't do it, so I'm already done. Like, I'm too old to do it. Or this thing hurts, so I'm not going to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, aches and pains happen with working out, but like, it's less painful than like heart failure or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and don't worry about like what you look like out there. Like, first of all, I think it's important to remember most people are thinking about themselves. They're not really looking at you. You know what I mean? Like when I'm racing, I'm not looking at what you look like in spandex. I don't give a shit. I'm trying to think about myself and what I look like in spandex, you know. So just you know, so just move your freaking body. Like move your body. Get to know your body if you're a woman. You know what I mean? Get like for me physical exercise. It doesn't have to be triathlon. It could be yoga. It could be swimming. It could be anything. Just get in touch with your body. I think that's huge to like fostering a sense of like self-love is to kind of like get to know your body and be like, well, this stuff's not perfect, but it's, you know, my body's done a lot of good stuff too. It's birthed kids. It does, you know what I mean? Like, and so I think that's all I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah.
How can everybody find your podcast and your fitness journey?
Podcast is everywhere that you can find podcasts. It's called Age Groupie. You can email me at agegroupie@gmail.com. And you can look me up on Twitter and Instagram at Age Groupie, AGEGROUPIE, just Age Groupie. Or you can follow me on Strava, Lindsay Hiken. I'm not very fast, but I post something pretty much every day. I work out, so you can see what I'm doing. And I think that's about it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Lindsay,
Lindsay.
you're
Awesome.
a badass. Thank you so
Yeah.
much
Yes.
for your time. You are a badass. For real.
Beast.
It was great to meet you.
You too. Thanks, guys. I'm so excited to continue to follow your journey as you go all the way down to Mexico. I promise you it's going to get warmer and more
Looking
like
forward to it.
West Coast like what. It's actually good that you went this way instead of the other direction because you would have started out down there and gone north. You would have been like, bummed.
What happened?
Yeah.
You know?
I packed more bathing suits than I did sweaters.
I think you guys have got like 1 or 2 more days and you're going to be like 100% in bathing suit weather.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Wow.
Good luck.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Check us out.